These mountains are not real. They're computer generated. They look so real because of a type of math called fractal geometry. Fractals occur frequently in nature and are used in computer graphics to simulate natural phenomena like plants, forests, and mountains. This Mandelbrot set is another type of fractal visualization. Because of its repeating patterns, yet vast complexity, we can find almost infinite similarities or differences depending on where we choose to look. Humanity happens to be the same way. Where are these two women from? Can you guess? What about these two sets of mattress makers? Some try to divide the world with an imaginary line. For political reasons, this arbitrary and changing line between us and them varies with culture, religion, or geography depending on how they wish to divide the world at any given time. This results in a world that looks like this. This is an imaginary world, with borders and lines in between them. This is the real world. Overlapping traits and aspects which gradually change over time as we travel from one point to another. The word vai is an exclamation of excitement, fear, or anger, and all of this area uses it in some form. The word John means life or soul and is used as a term of endearment in all of this area. Guests are regarded as gifts from God in these regions here. And musically, in these areas, the main cultural rhythm goes ritatatita ratatatita. Here is where polyphony in music is an important trait. When we take all of these together, we understand how much we have in common with each other, and how things gradually change over time and distance as we travel. In addition, we can understand layers that are similar or different to other people. Time and politics also create these layers. Syria and Lebanon were one country for most of human history, and if we observe carefully, we can feel it in these two peoples. We can also perceive the differences that time and borders create. The modern analytical world uses abstraction to solve problems. This is good for science and engineering, but bad for big picture decisions and directions. As a result, common sense has become an uncommon thing. In Costa Rica, a damaged area of forest was treated with waste from an orange juice factory. Orange peels and pulp that were organic and not treated with insecticides. After 15 years, this treated area has regrown miraculously compared to the untreated area. Now, every traditional farmer knows that food scraps are one of the best fertilizers. Yet we continue to deplete our soils of their nutrients and dump food scraps into landfills mixed with toxic waste. Another example is from a tsunami a few years ago. During this tsunami, the animals felt the earthquake and moved instinctively to higher ground. The traditional fishermen knew from their oral histories the signs that a tsunami was coming and responded accordingly. Even a small schoolgirl had learned in school what a sudden change in tide meant and warned the people around her. The only group that didn't react or know what to do was modern man. Another issue is in the media. Despite a more diverse world, we see less diverse examples in media today. These faces were well known a few decades ago. Their ethnic features and background are less seen today than in the past. Fortunately, some groups are more represented in the media today, like African Americans and Asians. But within those representations, there is less cultural diversity and more uniformity than before. In music, too, there was more diversity. We now see so many styles of music simplified into rock and hip-hop, and maybe some electronic music. These developments are for commercial and marketing reasons. It's easier to market uniform products. Emotional depth is another reason we need to learn from other cultures. These two musicians, Yanni and Celine Dion, are two of the most popular artists in the world. Yet in America, they are often ridiculed by the average man. There was an infamous night where disco records were blown up and burned in a stadium. The third picture is from that night. Now, I'm sure a lot of disco music was not very good. But there is a phenomenon among some people of reacting to emotionality and feelings with anger and violence. This is where Eastern cultures can help develop emotional depth and sophistications, because emotions are highly respected and considered in those cultures. There are other real issues with modern life. Decreased happiness, feelings of disconnection and loneliness, obesity from fast food are some examples. Suburban America is one of the loneliest places on earth. This was my experience as well growing up there. For me, my visits to Iran gave me a lot of love and respect. I found role models in men that were masculine yet also kind, emotional, sensitive, and moral. Studying other cultures gives us robustness and depth. Athletes don't just practice their own sport. They often add weight training, dance, and other exercises to make them better at their main sport. These connections and pathways are also the biggest source of creativity. The origin of blues music, the root of so much modern music, has been a mystery to many Western researchers. Now they understand that blues has an Eastern as well as Western root. Here's an example.
Oh, Lord, I woke up this morning, man, I was feeling bad. Whoa, babe, I was feeling bad.
And here is some early boogie woogie inspired by classical music, an early remix by the famous duo Buck and Bubbles.
Lovely melody. Yeah, very good.
I heard that before. Will you play it again for me, please?
It'll be very interesting to note what he accomplishes with this one.
Yeah, that's right. I think I got it. Now play it once more for me. Very good.
Well.
And of course, different modes and melodies provided inspiration for not only mainstream jazz, but my favorite ethno jazz. Here is Lloyd Miller on Iranian TV in the 1960s. Opening doors of consciousness is key to development. Oftentimes we don't understand something unless we are exposed to it directly. Although I grew up in America, I knew very little about democracy and government because no one in my family had ever been involved in it. It was only when an organization introduced me to my congressman and taught me about civic participation that I understood how important and significant it can be. That's when I truly appreciated this aspect of America. And when I was 25, I started my own internet service company. People would call my company to connect to the internet. To start this company, I needed 100 phone lines at my house. In most parts of the world, this was unimaginable. Well, it took 3 phone calls. Yes, some arguing, but not much. After 3 days, a man came and dug a 2-meter trench in my backyard, spliced some cables, and in less than a week, I had 100 phone lines in my house. I understood then that, wow, okay, this is some of what makes America special. When I was sent to Syria on a work project many years ago, I was afraid. Even though I was from Iran, not far from Syria, I had never seen pictures or images of people from there, and I was worried. Syria turned out to be one of the most beautiful countries in the world. The people, the culture, the food were all amazing. I made friends there that I still have to this day. I saw an ancient Roman city, a town where Jesus' language is still spoken, Aramaic, and such a depth of human emotion. I traveled back there 5 times. Syria not only had things to teach Western culture, but Iranian cultures as well. Each culture had complementing strengths and weaknesses which could help the other grow. This is true for every culture. Connections are everywhere. Some connections are linguistic. And now you know why daughter is spelled dochtar in English. And some are conceptual. These words look different. They sound different. But they mean the exact same thing. So, where do these ladies come from? The lady on the left is from Garni, Armenia, and the one on the right, the Caspian region of Iran. This shouldn't be surprising, as they live just a couple of 100 kilometers apart, but for many it still is. These mattress makers on the left are in Batumi, Georgia, and the one on the right is in Tehran, Iran. We've all seen the meme where heaven is one set of things from somewhere, and hell is another set from the same places. Let's make the world a heaven for ourselves and each other by taking the good from anywhere and everywhere. This Iranian American started eBay. And we all know who this guy is. Well, his biological father was Syrian, and his adopted mother was Armenian. I'd like to finish off with a musical connection to Georgia. I grew up hearing this beautiful melody. So when I discovered Georgia, I felt right at home.